yeah, I mean, DMT's nuts, man. It's just not to be taken lightly. It's just one of those things where you need to have like a lot of respect for it, and you gotta treat it kind of like a legit ceremony. You know, it's not.
It's not just something you walk in and just whack on it.
Yeah, it's not just something where like you get home and you're fucking around and you listen to some TV and oh yeah, let me just smoke some DMT while I'm watching Cops. It's like, nah, bro, that's not it.
See, this is the thing. I like weed because I could just driving home from work, just fucking we're good, fucking 2 chimes of chill. Or that ironically, my favorite thing ever is to fight. It's like spar or to like roll high. Yeah. Because to me, when you roll high and shit,
it's different.
Yeah, dude.
It's a different thing.
It's a whole different thing. Yeah. Because on one hand, initially, like if I roll sober, don't get me wrong, it's like a very euphoric, very like it helps me get my demons out. It just it like takes all of that motherfucker out of me, like that I build up throughout my day, and I hold it all in, and then in the healthiest way possible. You guys, my training partners, Ryan, Riley, everybody. It's like a very healthy way to kind of expel
especially
that
Ryan,
negativity.
fuck him.
Dude, no. Ryan's a fucking dude. He's a savage, man. Yeah. Talk about an absolute animal. His life story, dude. He's an absolute unit.
I don't know his life story,
dude. It's not exactly a thing I should talk publicly about or whatnot, but yeah, dude, he's a good dude. Yeah.
No, he is a good dude.
Okay, legitimately, now I'm actually, you've talked about, what happened in 1971. You got to do a little bit of explaining to this one for me. I'm going to start looking through the page here.
I don't know enough about it to get that far into it, but basically the gist of it is that, you know how technology has increased like dramatically? Yes. And so the productivity has dramatically increased, but the wages have stayed the exact same, if not, like they went up a little bit. But typically what was supposed to happen was the wages were supposed to go up with the productivity and with all of that. Like if you've got if your company is making an absurd amount of money, it's supposed to kind of go back to the people making that product. And that just stopped happening in 1971. The wage gap dramatically increased to just the top people, and nobody else made any more money. So it just got completely stagnant. Well, I'm sure there are a lot of other things as well.
Well, I'm looking at the fucking sheet here, and it's saying the growth in growth in production hourly compensation is productivity 246% versus the compensation only going up 115%. Right. But you know what's even staggering? If you look at 2020 to 2024, the amount of money that you are required to make to live comfortably.
Oh yeah, no.
Just 4 years ago.
It's ridiculous.
It's way ridiculous. And then you have to kind of think about that. What was the leading causes to this? And then the next question is, do we hold people leading this up responsible, aka our government and these individuals that are continuously getting skims off the top for all these things, and they're no longer really worried about us. And that kind of brings into the question, is there a deep state? Do you believe there's a functioning deep? I think we're gonna agree on that one.
I mean, it's kind of inarguable now. Like when you have like the World Economic Forum, you literally have a group of individuals that are all absurdly rich, that share common interest with each other.
The Sackler family, the Rothschild family.
Everybody, anybody who, so like all of these this one, I think it was Bill Burr, said it was perfect because it's like, even if they're not conspiring to do the same shit and like fuck people over intentionally or whatever, they're all going to the same clubs. They all have the same shares. They have the same interests. So, like, if I want my investments to go up, I'm gonna vote this, and I'm gonna do that. And we're all at the same. We're all at the same like
we all have club. Relatively the same interests. We all want to make money.
Yeah, so I don't even have to talk to you.
Yes.
To be voting the same way as you.
Or to have very aligned goals in that manner.
Exactly, and it goes like that with everything. So it's like, even if you don't even fucking know the people at your golf club or World Economic Forum is like golf club to the top level.
Aficionados.
They're literally conspiring. That's their thing, is to conspire.
Well, fucking, you go all the way back to the Alex Jones stuff and that, what the hell, that island where they were hailing the owl statue and shit?
Oh, yeah.
Like, there's always been little insider cultish clubs that,
well, that was
us, the commoner folk, we just weren't allowed to be part of, you know?
Yep, unless you were like a gay strip. I think like gay prostitutes got to go there.
You know what? You saw that video of the guy getting fucked in the ass in the White House, right?
I didn't see the video, but I saw...
dude.
I just... No, I didn't want to see the
Yo,
I didn't want to get too hard.
I swear to God.
I didn't want to get a boner.
I thought it was the White House. Maybe it was something else. Maybe it was the Capitol building.
It was the Capitol,
It was the Capitol building?
Yeah.
Because they had the video. The dude... Yep, right here. The dude is literally like fucking him in the ass, and it's a panning shot of his back. And it's like, dude, how... If you are in a position... Yeah, if you're in a position of power... How much of I don't give a fuck, I know I'm not going to get in trouble, do you have to think to yourself?
And, like, fuck to not
only
place.
Yeah, to not only fuck another man in the ass in the middle of a government building, but then film yourself doing it.
Right.
And not have the wherewithal to have, like, a little sense of, like, oh, maybe I should hide that video a little better.
Well, that's a great point. Also, I was thinking the same thing when I saw it. I'm like, how unaware is this guy, because there's a difference. So it could be one of two things. Obviously, there are more than one of two, could be more than just two things. But typically, it's either and you don't care, or you care, but you just don't know. You're unaware. It's like ignorance versus stupidity, right? Ignorance is like but you don't fucking care. And stupidity is like you're just not aware enough. So it's like one of two things. He very well could...
downright are just ignoring what's actually proven.
That's ignorance.
And you're still, then you're just outright going...
You're aware,
It's not even that. Care. It's like, I was listening to Tucker Carlson, and he was talking about, there's a legitimate evil spirits and legitimate good spirits. Joe Rogan? Yeah, and like it's energies
reacting to that.
Yeah, and he had said something
I didn't make it far, though. I passed out because I didn't sleep in like days. But I'm gonna watch that.
I'm telling you, it's a good one. But
it wasn't talking about like UFOs and shit in the beginning.
A little bit,
like,
a little
interesting.
bit. He did talk a little bit about Alex Jones.
I think Alex Jones is pretty dope.
Here's the thing.
He's got good ideas, and some are crazy, but he's like a good person. He's not trying to fuck anybody. It doesn't seem
I don't think he's trying to fuck anybody, but I also think, and it's a very Joe Rogan opinion, but in my stupid opinion, I think he is an individual who was deep diving into conspiracy theories long before anybody else was.
Right.
He was like the OG of this, and so for a long time, and then after such a long time of researching like horrific fucking things, and then finding out so many of them were correct or real.
Yeah.
And then becoming a cultural icon like he did.
It's probably
really
the worst
modifies.
thing.
Yeah, it's the worst thing for you because it modifies your outlook of everybody else because now everybody's judging you in a way that if you were just a private investigative journalist and you were just doing this research on your own, sure it would scare the fuck out of you, but nobody would know you. You'd have some level of anonymity about it.
You can't create like mass psychosis.
Yes, if you
just if you're a smaller person
and your words don't have as much of a weight to them.
Right.
Like where Alex Jones, with the Sandy Hook incident and stuff, him talking about that and, making all these wild allegations and stuff, you have to take that as a guy who spent his life researching the very fucking darkest parts of our own government and stuff, and then now being a cultural icon, I don't know if maybe there's a certain level of pressure to maybe be outrageous and oh my god, it's Turner the Frog, yay, I think that's got to be at least somewhat of a character, even if maybe
he's got to get I to me that's like kind of gets high a little bit from I totally feel that. Like, I get it. Like, when you talk about something you're really interested in, and if you have some data behind it.
You get those endorphins and stuff. You get going. You get passionate about it.
So when I see him, I, like, see a little bit of myself, like, that aspect of, like, man, yeah, I fucking...
Yeah, get in that groove, you know? Dude, sing that chord.
Fucking cook, man.
Chord.
Yeah, it's so I can totally feel that. And you can get lost in that. So I feel like maybe more often than not, he gets lost in those kind of like rants. Mm-hmm. Whereas like for me, when I get into like certain kind of rants, I almost like am in this flow state and I don't even feel like I'm really like speaking. I feel like the universe or whatever it is just like giving me information. And the moment that runs out, that's when I'm like, okay, it's time to stop. You know, I've lost whatever connection that is. And then when I look back, I'm like, oh, that's kind of interesting. I don't ever really like say anything that I don't have any information that I don't know. You know, I'm not like trying to claim anything. You know what I mean? Like I don't really believe much. The things that I say are just theories, you know, like I have a lot of ideas but I don't think I have anything that I can like prove really. You know, it's really hard to prove something. So I'm not like, unlike him, I'm not going into places where like shit like that kind. There's territory for people that are contemplating things, you know, and there's territory that's not really the best for those kind of people. You know what I mean? Like, I'm never going to talk about, like, shootings. I'll talk about, like, shootings and stuff, but I'm not going to go on my conspiracy theory thinking when it comes to things like that. You know what I mean? Because it's just...
There's certain lines you won't cross in level of that thinking.
There's just... I mean, it's not necessarily lines, because if there's enough information, then I'll be like, I'll entertain it. But at the same time... There's only so much good you can do in that situation, and there's so much more negative things that can come from it. And I don't feel like the juice is worth the squeeze in a lot of situations with that. So personally, I would just like skip that. You know, I would like, there's just things that I would just skip because it's not really worth
the flack that's gonna come with saying that,
and like my mental fortitude. It's like it's not worth, because then I'm gonna like try and go to sleep. And I'll be thinking, well, you know, it's like my brain will, it's just not worth it. It's not worth it. A lot of things just...
But that's where I think him being such a large public figure plays into that, because I think to a certain degree, he feels that maybe he's the one that has to say that with such a platform.
That's true.
And maybe he finds out some of this information, he feels he's got to hit a red alert button.
That's a great point.
And now with him being such an icon, he's built up such like a background, or what he feels is like an ability to make change in what he has to say.
Yeah.
And so when he found some evidence that, you know, he felt like he needed to ring the bell on, you know, he made statements and comments about it, and it's just, you know, every once in a while, sometimes you miss.
Yeah.
You know?
It was just a bad spot to miss out.
And I think that was just such a touchy topic.
Right.
You know? And I think in the day and age that we live in now, especially a couple of years ago, now keep in mind, this event of them all going after him, this was a couple of years ago. That's before we, like, the witch hunt that's going on today.
It's been a minute.
Like, today, you can get in trouble for saying a lot of shit. You have to be really careful about what you say.
Now.
There's, like, you know what, South Park was the funniest. It's, like, about Disney. It's like you can't make any jokes and stuff, but South Park was still willing to make like a joke like about ruining Disney, Kathleen Kennedy. It's like put a ticket in, make it gay, make it lame. It's what the hell is it? It's the Pandaverse one.
Okay.
And the whole like theory, like the whole theme of the episode is that Kathleen Kennedy, they found, and Disney found this stone called the Pander Stone. It's them pandering to their audiences and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's kind of talking about...
I thought you said panda at first, and I'm like,
okay. I legitimately, when I was looking for it, and my coworkers were talking about it, I was like, Pandaverse? Like,
what are we saying?
What the fuck does that have to do with Disney?
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Pandering to the audience.
Yep.
And it's that hasn't worked well at all. It's like they found the wrong... They just fucked up.
You want to talk about fucked up? Bud Light fucked up.
Yep.
Bud Light fucked up hard.
But
they're coming back.
Yeah, now they're with UFC.
They're coming back.
It's like... I mean, I'm not really into football, but the UFC I'm into. So
I am
it's
into
like,
UFC.
I mean, I used to drink Bud when I was younger, like as a kid, before I turned 21.
You know what? I've never been a
just
Bud Light guy.
Well, it's like that's what you drink if you're gonna drink a 30 rack and you want cheap shit.
I guess
you know
so,
I mean?
but I've always been a Corona guy.
Oh yeah, me too. I love
to
Corona.
this day, I'm a cider guy. Love
Cider?
ciders, hard ciders.
I honestly I don't really drink much, but Corona's that's like my go-to typically. But yeah, Bud Light. Yeah, I'm not going for Bud Light. That's if you're literally trying to get fucked up and you don't want to. It's like mostly water.
If you want to have a backyard tailgate party,
right?
That's what you bring. You bring Bud Light to the party,
and you don't feel like spending a lot.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it's exactly what that is.
That's what, yeah.
I think that's like the backbone of America's image was like a redneck dude with a mullet, a red Ford F-150, like a 1990s, you know? Tailgate's down, cooler, full of fucking Bud Light right there. That's like,
I mean,
America.
That's a commercial right there.
Right there.
That's what they should have went with, you know? That's the commercial you go with.
Nope.
Not the other shit, man.
Such a backlash, you know?
Yeah, my sister was like, she was so mad at them. Honestly, I don't know. I don't care that much about other stuff. I see where they fucked up.
Yeah.
It's very clear, but I don't know. I don't know. I just, they fucked up.
You know what my view is on it? So, my background being, you know, both my parents fought in the military. My mom had lost her friend in combat. And I remember one time we were, and I'll tie this all in at one point, and we were at a football game when I was a kid. And one of the parents or whatever the fuck, I can't remember the whole thing, but they wanted to kneel during the flag. And I thought it was fucking disrespectful. Like, obviously, my parents, you know, were in the military. Obviously, you have to pay some level of respect. I grew up having respect for the service.
What is the kneel thing? What is that?
It's
is that the black... were they doing that at the NFL?
Transferred into that. For a long while, it was just protesting whatever, you know, major thing was happening at the time. A lot of it being, you know, police shootings and whatnot.
But really, you're protesting our country.
Yeah, you're protesting the country.
Like, the people that fought for the country.
Yep.
Like,
and so...
That's fucked up.
My mom taught me a valuable lesson because I was ready to fucking berate this people for, like, what the fuck are you taking a knee for? You know? Like, what the hell? You have a great country. You're not fucking getting bombed.
Right.
You know, what the hell do you have to, like, cry about, you know? Go to the movies. Go to the mall and stuff, you know? You have it way better than 90% of the fucking world, you know?
Yeah. And
my mom told me something. She actually got mad at me, and she said, you know what? You have to understand that, you know, and she was saying this, you know, that my time in the military and your father's time in the military were spent defending and fighting for their right to do whatever the fuck they want. And that includes protesting about it. That's entirely their right. And she was telling me about, you know, how important it was and that she learned that lesson that, you know, her friend died in an ambush. And so the cost that she has paid for their right to do that is why she says, you know what, fuck it. If that's what they want to do, that's what they want to do.
It's a good way of looking at that.
Yeah. And so my belief on that and any of these, you know, topics and whatnot is that, you know, if you feel the need to express yourself in whatever way you need to, go for it. What I will not accept and what I do not under any circumstance think is right is for you to tell me what I can and can't say to make you happy.
Right.
Or to be part of your game show.
Whatever. Pandering.
You know? Yeah. Like,
I'm not pandering
so if your entire right is to be allowed to express yourself in however you feel or however you think is most, you know, representing, why does that mean that now I have to play along and censor what I say and censor what I do? Like, I think the war on comedy is going to probably be, like, war on comedy and as a whole on freedom of speech in a weird way. Yeah. If you think about like a 1984 by George Orwell, like that double speak, you know, where you slowly start modifying a language. Like I had asked you before, does language create thought or does thought create language? It was a question my anthropology asked me one time. My anthropology teacher asked me one time. And it's very interesting because if you think about certain words and certain phrases that even in English are rooted in other countries like or in other countries or other languages like déjà vu. You know, we hear déjà vu. It's a very short term, you know, déjà vu. But we automatically associate it with, you know, the feeling of being somewhere more than one time, you know, or have been seeing or feeling an experience that you've already done before.
Yeah.
You know, so a very long-winded explanation of a very short term, right? So the question being, if I explained to you,
which is what words do,
the long form of something, of déjà vu, would you then come up with the image of déjà vu or have the word of déjà vu in your head? Or does saying déjà vu give you the thought process of the long form of that explanation?
Well, it depends if you've experienced it, and it depends how well you explain it. You know.
Well, but let me ask you a question.
I would say first, in general, like does language, what is it? Does language create?
Well, so does language create thought, or does thought create language? So you have to think about the progression of human language throughout history and the values of each country or empire or civilization that held that, you know, language at the time. What values do they hold? And then you look at their language, and you have to understand, you know, certain aspects of each language, because they don't speak in the same form or have the same customs when they speak, their values change. You know, there's a lot of changes in everybody's beliefs.
Yeah.
All right. So the question is if you were to retract words from a language, and think of like language as like toys you're giving a child. Okay. If you give that child a certain set of blocks, eventually that child's going to learn every single combination of those blocks, right? But if you start taking blocks away, that child either will eventually forget those combinations because they no longer are able to create that, you know, same string of those blocks, right?
Yeah.
So does that then change the child's thinking because that block no longer exists, right? So does language create thought, or does thought create language? And the importance and the reason I ask you that, Ponder, is because if we continue a process of censoring,
if we change language,
changing language and censoring what we have to say, we change our thoughts, right? And then by doing that, we then change our values. And I ponder that, you know, in one hand, every horrific act in history was always started by the waving of a true virtue.
The road to hell is often paved in good intentions.
In good intentions, right? So if we want to start as a country saying, all right, we're such shitty people. By the way, this is like a ridiculous amount of hate on our own country, of self-hate that we've taught even like my generation growing through high school.
I mean, our country's bombed a lot of fucking people, but at the same time, we've done more than any other country on the planet.
I'm
for
23,
progression.
And the biggest theme in high school that I could remember was like racism and about the patriarchy and about how, because like even just like around me, because I'm a white male, I should have so many, you know, fucking advantages, and I should feel so proud that my ancestors oppressed all these other people. It's like, I didn't do that. My ancestors did it. My fucking parents were from Canada.
Also, just on that, because somebody mentioned that in one of my college classes.
We just completely ADHD'd right
it doesn't
off
matter.
of that other one.
We'll spin around.
We'll come back to it.
But on that, so you have all these people saying this with the racism thing, and here's the answer: is there are more people, there are more slaves in Africa now and all around the world than there have ever been in history ever, like combined everness. So like these people, if they actually gave a fuck about slavery, my ancestors and this and that, fucking put your attention toward where the slaves are.
Yeah, why aren't we putting...
Like, what are we doing? You're just talking, you know what I mean?
It's funny. I heard this fact on the podcast the other day, that there is... You have to think about the chain it takes to create all the electronics, the process to get all these, what they call conflict minerals, like cobalt and stuff.
Gotcha.
The slavery and whatnot that goes into that.
Yeah.
The fact that there's... all these people that are tweeting, you know, all these virtuous things, hashtag just stop oil from all these iPhones. It's like the most incredible buffoonery that you could possibly have is like sitting and talking about that. about slavery and about, all these different virtuous things.
Yeah.
Where
You know,
you're
in
doing it
China,
on a slave phone.
In China, where they build iPhones, or
They got
specifically...
slave nets on the windows in factories.
dude. Not just on the... Yeah, but across...
For kids, too.
Like, for everybody. Across... So you've got two buildings, right? This is one building. This is another building. Across the buildings, there are nets... Literally that, like, over the streets, like, you've got a street, with cars coming, and just above, like, the highest truck or whatever, you've got a net, and then another net, and then another net, and it goes all the way across, like, because so many people have jumped out and killed themselves because they're living there, and that's all they have. It's like, and that wouldn't be a thing if Apple didn't. Obviously, now you're always going to have people make arguments that, like, if we don't, somebody else will.
Well,
but it's like, if
the other thing about
if everybody says no, I mean...
Here's the problem with that one. You have to understand that, like, or at least I'm not speaking to you directly, but there has to be a level of understanding about, the economic status of the world, okay?
Yeah.
America, a lot of us here are very blind to the struggles of everyday life for the rest of the world.
For
right?
sure.
We are the richest country in the world.
Yeah.
I
need my Starbucks at...
We are consistently spoiled, and we are basically, it's almost funny. Through consumerism, we've almost put ourselves into a cycle of obsolescence and need for something new. It's like this refreshing... Yeah, it's like a refreshing cycle.
There's kind of an interesting thing on that. It's like...
You gotta have the latest and greatest. Always.
It's almost like we are... That's like how we're kind of like built in a way, because without that, we wouldn't keep creating. It's almost like that's in our nature, so that we keep creating and inventing. And that's what gets me, like, we can go later on, we'll get to this, but it's like, it makes me wonder, like, because there's another interesting question you asked, like, if you were God, how would you speak to people? And my thing would be, like, thoughts. I would introduce thoughts and ideas into their brains.
Well, right back to our thing. Does thought create language, or does language create thought?
Right.
And I remember I had asked you about before, how there was the simple problem that I was watching on YouTube about how do we deal with radioactive waste, and how do we deal with it in a way that if there was ever an apocalyptic event, how would we tell the survivors or a future generation, like, that would be, mining, yo, watch out, this is dangerous, like, don't fucking touch this. What symbolism would you use? Because, skull and bones hasn't always meant pirates.
Well, I think...
Hasn't always meant death. Hasn't always meant
I actually
hard.
came to realize, like, I was thinking towards the end, after, like, we rolled for a bit, I thought the best thing is picture. It's like a pictures. Like, so... Just the easiest way to describe anything is showing what something does in a whole picture, no matter how long it is. Maybe it's like a few, like, almost like video form, slow pictures. You see a person maybe going up, eating this or touching this thing, and then in the next scene, he literally, like, you show some kind of, like, death or something, and then you see, like, actual bones of the person to show that, like, they've actually died. There was plenty of other ways to describe it, but I'm saying, like, in general, in the past, they've done a pretty good job at that. I mean, this is what we've been doing this for a while, like cave drawings and drawings on, like, the Sphinx and the pyramids, which we can get into also, Anunnaki, like, that's kind of what they did, not as descriptive. But that's what I would do for sure, because you can't assume that everybody knows your language. You can't assume that everybody knows
or that your language will even exist at that time.
Yeah, that's what I mean. And also, you can't assume that, like, a skull and crossbones. You can't assume, like, those things are going to be well known at all. But what you can assume is that you still can't assume this either. But to me, it's like the closest you can get to, you can be an idiot and still see, okay, this is a person, if you have the ability to, like, put 1 and 2 together, then you can survive by looking at this thing. You see this person eat this herb, and it's the same exact color as this thing, you know, and then he's on the ground dead, and like, you know, whatever, he turns to skull and bones, and his family's looking at him.
Some kind of like picturesque timeline to have like an explanation of what it is.
That's the closest thing that I can get to, aside from like maybe some kind of psychedelic. But even then, that's that's
you know
like
what
ridiculous.
Though, if you pondering that question, how would God talk to man if you were God? Think about it now, all right? If Jesus were to return today, the language he would speak is dead. We have to translate that out of 2 other languages to even read the texts that were there.
Yeah.
We have misread the Dead Sea Scrolls how many fucking times? So my ponderance being, if you were an almighty being, it's like that other question, you know, could God make an unliftable stone?
Right.
Because if God could make an unliftable stone, then there's a limit to his power, right? There's some limit to what he could do.
Yeah.
Right? So then he's not really an all-powerful being, is he? Right. But then if he can't make an unliftable stone, does he then is he all-powerful to make
Either way, it questions his power.
It's a paradox.
Yeah.
So I kind of forgot what the fuck I was going off on.
You're talking about
how God would talk to people.
Yeah.
So if you think about the human consciousness and about the reactions that happen in our brain, especially like with like DMT and psychedelics, and the stoned ape theory, where you know you're talking about apes millions of years ago starting to eat mushrooms, and then over a small period of time they begin to incorporate that to their daily diet, and obviously some of these fucking shrooms are tripping sack.
Yeah.
All right.
Different levels of doses you get from the beginning, which increases your visual acuity, which makes you a better hunter. And when you're a better hunter, you get better women, you get more women, you get more food, so you can feed your family. You become the alpha, basically, or the whatever that is. And then the second level is you get more horny. So of ingesting these mushrooms, you get more horny. So now you're procreating even more.
And then they pick up on your habits of eating that same thing. It becomes a more common thing. And then over the course of time, you know that eating mushrooms will help grow and create new neurons and connections in your brain. And so you're putting like an artificial pressure on evolution in order to continue to make that process.
On needing to take this evolutionarily beneficial thing, because it literally leads to better everything, more hunting, more this, more that. And then the last thing is it creates synesthesia, which is the melting of the senses, which is literally which is your ability to like smell sounds and like taste words or taste sounds and shit like that, and see sounds. And the benefit of that is that's literally what language is. It's a melting of 2 senses. Like you have a word, a vibrational frequency that comes out of your mouth, and when you say this word, it's paired to some kind of meaning, some kind of like visual and some kind of experience.
I definitely think there is far more to frequencies and the wave spectrum
for sure
than is being taught in higher education, that is being taught in common education and in general education. I don't even know, I think that if you look at like Newton's law that energy can't be created or destroyed, it's transferred. Yep. And you look at like radio waves or frequencies or some kind of like light wave, all these things that are like driving principles that took us forever to understand. Like we don't even really understand what state of matter light really is. Is it a particle? Is it a wave? Is it air? Does it move? Like how do you physically
quantify this thing?
Air, yeah, or light. What do you do with that? We know that it illuminates things. We know how fast it can go, but what really is it?
Yeah.
So, I think that when you talk about spirits, and this comes back to that Tucker Carlson podcast where he was talking about there are times where you as an individual are brought to a situation and you will feel inclined to either act in a manner that is more than yourself. You're doing something that is above and beyond what your character would normally do, or you are going out of your way to do a good deed or to be a hero in some situation.
Yeah.
And there are 100% situations that you come upon in life where you are inclined to do something far beneath your character. You are drawn by some innate desire to do some deed that you will eventually regret.
Sexual desire. She said she was 18.
Sometimes it could be a sexual desire. It could be a criminal desire. It could be...
That grandma was talking shit.
And I cunt punched that bitch to next Tuesday. I fucking hated that bitch.
And then she kicked my ass.
And then she whipped the shit out of me. I guess Granny had fucking knuckles in her purse, you know?
Turns out she knows judo and she's got brass
fucking
knuckles.
threw my ass. So I think that, we were talking about, ghosts and whatnot. I think that those are energies or are spirits or beings. I think there's some form of frequency that we can find to communicate.
I can definitely see that.
Or that they could be resonating on, like that consciousness or higher energy that we are.
For sure.
I think that that's on some band or wave that we in our three-dimensional space are not able to access. But I think that all of those times, all of those thoughts of, demonic spirits or heavenly angels or good or bad spirits or, entities are all able to be found on that, somewhere on that frequency spectrum.
Yeah.
All right? And I think that ideas, like you were talking about, it's interesting. Do you as an individual mind, is your organ, this thing in your fucking head that's somehow able to absorb light waves and pixels in your eyes and convert the images for you to understand what you're fucking looking at, and to be able to hear the vibrations that my organic meat muscles in my mouth are spewing at you, and you are able to somehow interpret those waves as words, as ideas, and then are able to then extrapolate some form of meaning from that, and then put your own spin on it and spew it back to me. Are we not in some weird way like a conduit for a frequency, and our brains tap into that and kind of articulate or download those ideas or philosophies or things or entities that are around us that are not consistently for everyone. They're not around all the time. Not all radios are playing all the same song. There's different frequencies and different things that are being played. And in some situations, rooms, places, areas, different frequencies are being played, and you're going to interact with those different thoughts, different entities, different spirits that are going to influence your little meat muscle in your main.
Yeah, well, Carl Jung, first of all, I would say for sure, and there are like levels to this. So those things very well could be around all of the time. We could have access to all of these. They're called archetypes. You've got like the hero, you've got the warrior, you've got the lover, you've got the magician, you've got the wise old man. Carl Jung talked about this. And what he got into was, so these thoughts, like where do they come from? And that's like the most interesting thing ever. He talked to this guy in his imagination. It's called a Red Book. He wrote a whole book about it after he did this. He basically got so deep in his, like he was so good at just going into his mind and basically dreaming while he was awake that he would go on adventures, like in a world.
Like lucid dreaming?
Like, lucid dreaming while he was, just chilling. But he could do it like whenever. And that that leaded him into like madness, nearly. But through that, he got all of this information, a whole book out of it called the Red Book, Carl Jung's Red Book. And basically there's this guy, so he came to this conclusion that there are archetypes, that there are these things, these universal things that everybody kind of like veers towards. So for example, like when he mentioned that, I got this video in my head of like the hero archetype, and that would be like Marcus Aurelius or like Ragnar Lothbrok, or basically a giant hero. Like what my brain gave me, the video was a giant hero, like a holographic one, in like neon, just blue and white. Just here's the span of all of the time that we as humans have, that we have history of. Here's the span of time, and then the video was like this giant archetype, the hero, walking through all of time as the same archetype. And all of these people, Genghis Khan, Achilles, they all used this. They channeled this archetype's power into themselves.
A man of many faces.
Yeah. They used this archetype. So the archetype, what I came to realize is, oh shit, because it's almost like it gave me this cheat code. It gave me this information. It's like archetype. Then I came to realize, okay, well maybe we have access to all of these archetypes. And the archetypes live forever throughout time. And we're trading. Because constantly there are things in my head that it feels like they're fighting, like these ideas are fighting for like me to use them, and typically the best idea wins, and that's what I'm going to choose, or the funniest idea wins, and that's what I'm going to choose, or I feel like I choose it at least, and then I say it. So what I've come to realize is, I call this the flavors theory, but it goes way deeper and way higher, but this is like the surface level of it, without going too crazy, is that we have access to all of the archetypes, and the hero, the lover, the joker, so we have access to all of them, and we have the ability to use them, and it's up to us which ones we give most attention to. And basically the archetypes, I believe, or I think potentially, I don't really believe anything too much, but I think it wouldn't surprise me if we all had access to all of the same archetypes. And in fact,
what if those archetypes are frequencies, like I was saying? They're consistent tones or frequencies that certain people, their brains are able to tap into that mindset or frequency, and are able to embody or channel that archetype through themselves.
Definitely could be.
Because I definitely think there's like a breed of mindset that you have to have in order to be someone that history would write about. And it's kind of funny. History is never kind to its subjects. Somebody said that.
It's always written by the victors as well.
Well, history is always written by the victors, and so they get to portray, things how they want to. And I think that ultimately, for you to have players like Genghis Khan, you have to have a ruthless individual who was grown up in a certain way, and a certain pattern in his life had to take place for him to have the mind, the personality it would take to conquer what he conquered and perform what he performed. And I think that those things kind of shape your mind, because as we know that, like, your memory is a series of pulses through your brain that your brain then recognizes and associates to certain things, right? So the color red, you see it, your brain pulses, a certain amount of times, your brain then recognizes that, or then creates imprints in its neurons in order to remember or recognize that pattern, right? So we know that your brain slowly grows as you're learning things and understanding, and your neurons are firing and you're intaking things and you're creating, new pathways and understandings. And I think that as your brain grows through certain events in your life, your brain grows to be able to accept a certain frequency that thereby helps channel, like you were saying, a certain archetype or a certain character of individual that it takes to make a fucking Genghis Khan, a Vlad the Impaler, a fucking Julius Caesar. Like, in order to get an individual who is so, like, undeniably influential through history, you have to have some crazy set of circumstances that would lead an individual to have such an extraordinary life.
Yeah, typically it's trauma. I would say it's all a matter of, like, inclination. I think the trauma and your life experiences and where you want to get to is what will motivate you to be more inclined to let in certain archetypes. Because I feel like we have access to all of them. Potentially it's more like the more you use, like if you don't use it, you lose it. So potentially you lose the ability to access those other frequencies if you're not using them.
Because you grow in to fit one specific one.
Right, one specific one specifically, but I feel like you get maybe 3. Like, I feel like consistently, because I'm always using the Joker archetype, which is like making jokes, and it was a very specific kind of archetype that everybody throughout history, it's very clear the ones that they are like inclined to use. It's really strange. It's really, really like on point with, these are like universal things that all of these people have in common, and it's very clear when they jump from like one archetypal way of acting and thinking to another, even in their speeches and in certain, it's really strange. Like he specifically said like that the Joker archetype, specifically people that utilize that are ones, like the Joker archetype has been known to speak about just ridiculous shit, specifically like feces, like fecal matter, and just crazy shit. And it's just kind of funny because like thinking about feces is hilarious. There's shit. Even feces, the way you say it.
Yeah.
It's funny.
Well, you know what? That question being is like certain archetypes. You know what I was thinking about recently is like the advancement of our military and our technology. You would think to a certain point, you would begin to understand as a culture what personalities and thoughts and archetypes, like you were saying, are crucial and which ones detract from our society, all right? And so you have to then think that as a government who is attempting to accomplish an agenda, would it not be within their best interests to start recruiting certain genetic disorders or mental like brains? Like you have to think like a ADHD or autism.
Yeah, even psychopaths.
Yep, in certain scales, like we know for a fact that they look for INTS?
Introspective, whatever.
Introverted, something.
Yeah.
They specifically look for those personality types because they're sociopaths, and they look for sociopaths or psychopaths for special forces and whatnot. Is because you'll have less of a hard time, accepting killing somebody.
Yeah.
Whereas like an ENTP would have like a really hard time. They're a very emotional person. You and I both know people that would just, like if a real situation popped off, that you're just like, I don't know if you could survive. You're like, it's like, I don't know, man. Like I don't know if you have what it takes to kill a rabbit. If you need to eat it.
I'm going to have to eat you, actually.
Yes. Yeah, right? Like you might be the food if you're not careful. Yeah. So I think that as a government and as a people, I think that to a certain degree, like if you talk about the MK Ultra programs where they started psychologically dosing people with LSD and whatnot to test the effects on that, to try and test the effects of, mind control and whatnot, you have to think that it's somewhere down along the lines. They started thinking about what personality types, what psychological disorders, like bipolar, split personality disorders.
For sure.
And so...
And feeding off of that. Yeah, for sure. But okay, so just to like finalize the surface level of the archetypes, basically, to me it makes sense that like you ever get like when I was younger, this would happen all the time. I get like mad, and there's this underlying thing just under that wants to get out, and it wants to just fucking zip, and then but you let it out. It's like you give it the wheel to your vehicle, and you almost kind of black out a little bit. And it's almost like you're allowing it the vehicle. You're allowing it the ability to steer and use your vehicle for however long, and then all of a sudden you come back to and you're like, oh shit, like fuck my bad. Now you have to apologize yourself out of it because it wasn't really you. And I got thinking about like what really is that? And to me, this is where I get, and this happens not just with anger, because that's an archetype in itself. That's the warrior, right? For better or for worse. But there are other aspects to this. I get it with creative things. I get it with talking. Sometimes I'll like go on this rant, and I'm just like I like give it the wheel, whatever it is, And all of a sudden I like come back to, and it's over, you know, and it was said better than I could say it. Things that I've written down, I would zone out and I come back to, and it's written, and I look at it and I'm like, I don't even write this way. Like, it's not even how
who the fuck is that?
Who the fuck is that is right. So I'm like, what the fuck is this? And then I study Carl Jung, and he gets into these archetypes, and I'm like, okay, well, let me think about this. So I got this video of like all history, and you've got this hero archetype. It was probably like a hero and a king archetypes, right? And they embodied those two things above everything else, and that's what led them to, you know, whatever. Definitely not necessarily the lover archetype, because they would have been nicer. But so then it got me thinking, okay, well, is that what defines an actual personality? Is like the archetypes that we let in most, that we let drive our vehicle most. And then I got to thinking, okay, well, if they can span all of time, then maybe there is a trade-off. Maybe, because we're only here that we know of for a finite period of time. So to me, but it's pretty clear to me that these archetypes are shown and expressed throughout everybody in all of time. Like these, and they're very specific traits to these archetypes that these people share. Like you can literally define each one, and it's really fascinating. And so my point of this, just to conclude, is that it's interesting because it very much feels like these things want, whatever it is, it feels like whatever the influences going on inside of us, without sounding like crazy, they want the driver's seat. So to me, if I were to like thought experiment and perceive this externally, I would be like, okay, well, maybe these things, maybe it's a trade-off. Maybe they are trying to get in. The one thing that they can't have is the immediate presence of like of time, like the driver's seat, you know, like
they can't participate in active time.
Yes.
They can be as a third point of view observer.
Yep. They're only the observer the whole time.
I've heard that principle.
And so
before.
what they want the whole time, and they're feeding you the best ideas and anything.
The best they can do is influence, but they can't actually take over under certain circumstances.
Unless you give
able to touch in.
Yeah, unless you give them driver's seat.
Yeah, I've heard about this one.
So in a sense, I've never heard of this. But to me, it makes sense that maybe we are playing a game where they are offering us infinite history of wisdom and knowledge, and that's why we get all these downloads and information. Now, that could come from other things too, and it probably does.
You know what?
But then we trade off by, they offer us all of that, and we offer them the ability to be in the present moment for periods of time. And maybe to them, the present moment is everything. Because to us, the present moment is everything. You know, maybe it's all about the present moment, and we have this trade-off with them. And that's all for that. What were you going to say?
I was going to say, you know how you were talking about this like trade-off for something with them for us? Do you know who I was listening to? Diana Walsh Polk, who is a professor of religion at, I believe, Cambridge.
Okay.
Don't quote me on that one. But she was talking about crafts and about the religious implications that aliens have.
Okay.
And I think I was talking to you about this at class one time. About, you know, if you were an individual 2,000 years ago who was etching this story into stone, and you were being told a story that was, you know, supposedly like some odd 4,000 years old. It was spoken history long before it was ever even written history. And you're playing a giant telephone game about events that happened long before your great-great-grandfathers were born. Yeah. My ponderance would be, then, you know, obviously we've all played telephone game. We can sit and confidently say that, you know, like by the end of that line, it's like fucked up.
Just
right?
10 people by the end of the line.
Imagine hundreds.
Yeah.
Hundreds.
Over thousands
of years. Right? So the interesting thing is, just like, you know, what I was talking about before, does language create thought, does thought create language? If you are going to tell the story of the start of mankind, how would you do it in a manner that somebody thousands of years down the line who would not be able to even remotely understand your language, how would they be able to do it? Like, for instance, in the Hoover Dam, there's a star map that locks in what day or like what year the Hoover Dam was built, so that any advanced civilization that is able to map the stars and chart their movements would be able to tell what time that Hoover Dam was built.
That's cool.
In case there was ever a problem with that.
I heard there was some other shit going on at the Hoover Dam. I don't remember exactly what it was, though.
There's probably all kinds of crazy shit. There's probably Bigfoot in there. So the interesting part would be that if you are going to tell the story of mankind's creation
with words,
right? How would you do that? And you would talk about a god, right? So now let's play imagination. This kind of gets into like, you know, the Younger Dryas and like some Graham Hancock stuff, but right? Yeah. So let's imagine for half a second that there's an advanced civilization that decides, it reaches a point where it decides it is going to artificially create some new life form, some new intelligence, right? We're on the verge of doing that with artificial intelligence, right?
All the time.
We are on the verge of it right now.
Yeah, we're constantly creating shit and hoping that it's
continuously progressing, right? So if we were to create an artificial being, right? And then we knew that this being was going to have some semblance sentient. Of attention. Yeah.
Because we're constantly making artificial beings.
Yup, of intelligence, right?
Yeah.
So how would that species tell the story of its creation, right?
That's a great... So if it depends on the language it has, right?
Yeah. So if you think about the story of Adam and Eve, right? You hear about how God created this perfect Garden of Eden, all right? And in this Garden of Eden, he created Adam, and Adam was lonely, and so he wanted to have a partner.
I turned it off.
And so from Adam's rib, God created Eve,
I have a whole thing on this.
So let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
If you think about how you would explain a cloning process to somebody who would take this and, 200,000-300,000 years from now, you would say to somebody that they took a piece of a man and made another person, right? That sounds a lot like a DNA sample, right? It sounds like what we did to Dolly the sheep.
Well, it sounds like what we do all the time, especially the rib, which has bone marrow, which is like the source of DNA and stem cells. Yeah, that's exactly... Yeah. Also, Adam and Eve, you've got... This is where it gets real deep. Is like, you've got the snake. So Adam and Eve are in Eden, the most beautiful, the perfect place ever, right? And but God says specifically, well, it's Elohim, so that's actually the powerful one's not powerful one. But aside from that, God says, you can do anything you want, just don't touch the apple tree.
This apple,
this
right?
Apple, right?
This thing that was described as an apple. This important artifact.
Now they're chilling, they're living life, right? And this snake comes up, who actually was Enki. The snake comes up and the snake says, yo man, he actually went to the girl and was like, basically told her that the snake will make you like God. It will make you like God. Conscious in a sense. That's what he meant by that. So she ends up doing it. She ends up eating it and then having Adam eat it. And basically what happened was, and this is nuts because it's like, it's so after they had the apple, they realize that they're naked, implying that they weren't aware that they were naked before. Implying even more so...
An awakening of some kind of consciousness.
They woke up.
Self-thought.
They became conscious. They're self-aware now. Meaning that God kept them deliberately unaware of themselves and unaware of everything. Like they're not even aware that they don't have clothes on. That's like the lowest level that's animal level of unawareness, of self-awareness. So, and God didn't only not keep it from them, he enforced it. He's like, you can't.
And then punished them for eating the apple.
Right, and then punished. Yeah. So my point is, who's the bad guy in this situation? Like, is it God or is it the devil? Like, is it the devil or is it God? Because so far as I can see, the devil is the one responsible for Adam and Eve's conscious evolution. Like, without the devil, maybe they would have, out of chance, randomly eaten
what's
something.
an even, like, weirder thought to that?
What?
Is that if God is an all-powerful being, why would he have, and he created everything, and he was all-powerful, how and why would he have created the devil or allowed the devil to continue?
That's what I've been saying forever. It's like, why not just get rid of him?
And that's the kind of the biggest issue that maybe I have with, being religious, is that, from a young age, my parents put me in like a preschool, like a Catholic preschool. So I listened to the whole, the guy walk out and the guitar, sing
I didn't
the
have
songs.
that.
I had the Lord and
I had
Savior.
to do the church thing though. Yeah.
And I just, even from a young kid, I was like, I just don't buy the stories that they say, in the Bible and whatnot.
My questions just never got answered. Sorry.
Nope, you're good.
I had a bunch of Reese's cups earlier, so now I'm craving sugar. But that's why I needed energy drink also. Typically, I'm not into that. But yeah, I had the same thing. But my questions, I'm a child answering or asking pretty kind of like simple questions, and they couldn't answer these questions. Like if Adam and Eve were the only two people, like how did we have everybody without just massive incest? You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like you can't have a family today, like have
on thousands of years of incest.
You can't have like 3 generations of incest before they all start deforming and the Whitaker family.
Yeah, I was just about to bring up. Do you know about the Whitaker family? Yeah, dude, that's fucked up.
And that's like 3 generations.
At the camera.
Oh, I know.
That's all he could do to talk.
More like tweaked. Well, that gets into that gets into like the language versus, like the thought thing.
And then what does that guy think? What how does he think? Does he think in words?
And that's where I was going to get to in the beginning, is like it depends on what we're talking about with thinking. Like, can you think? Because here's another question that I heard before. It was like blind, or was it blind? Yeah, blind people, before they read Braille, do they think in, like, what do they think in? Like, what language do blind people think in before they read? Was it Braille or was it deaf people before they learn? Oh, sign language. Yeah, it was deaf people. What language do deaf people think in before they learn sign language? And it's an interesting thought. It's the same kind of a thought, because they have to think something. So in my mind, this is where I get to images, videos. That's how I think. I don't think in words, or I think in images. I think in mainly videos. That's how I think. And that, to me, that's the most effective way of thinking. But like, that makes sense no matter who you are, you don't need language. Like, it's just like I would do with I didn't even really put these together, but it makes sense. Just like I would do if I were to describe something to like a group of people, I would do it as close to a video as I can. This will kill you, eat this, and then you show the effects of it. Video, like as close as you can to like a real example of like what would happen. So it makes sense. Maybe they think in video, and then they add on this sign language. Maybe we thought in video and pictures, and then we added on language as like a secondary kind of a thing. And an even greater question might be, is that better or worse? Like, is it limiting us or not? Thinking in it in that sense. Now, like, doing things with it is another thing, but it very well could be limiting because we only have so many words. And if we thought in just pure video all of the time, we wouldn't be limited by the words that we have and the vocabulary that we have of those words,
Well, we would have a much harder time communicating ideas to one another.
Well, yeah. Unless we could transmit. Like, you ever seen the video Arrival?
Yes, I have. The movie?
Yeah, how they transmit like
with the circle,
symbols.
And it's like a future, it's like a time-oriented language.
Yeah.
It's consistent in the past, the future, and the present.
Yep, and it uses symbols. It's like a picture. You know, like if we could communicate, and this is probably the future with technology, implants, fucking Elon Musk's shit, Neuralink. That's probably the easiest way to do it, is because typically with words, that's the biggest issue, is the disconnect between how somebody is saying something and how somebody's interpreting what that person is saying. You know, it's a vocabulary thing, or it's, you know, either this person has too high of a vocabulary and can't like go, you know, get to the same level, or there are many different things. Reaction, emotional expression, visual, like how you're explaining something, so many things. But if you could just show them a video of what you're thinking, you know, that gets rid of all of the assumptions,
You know what? That's that argument for Elon Musk's Neuralink right there.
It probably would be a great argument.
Yeah, that's what we're getting to. Yeah. Right?
And it would work, though.
You know what that just sparked me on in such a weird way? That movie Arrival. That does ask quite a big question.
I love it.
If we were to contact an alien species, an advanced alien civilization, how the fuck would we even declare peace with them?
Yeah.
How would you communicate? Like, what building blocks do we even have to start with? Our language wouldn't even have the same root, let alone the same beginnings of
We would have to trust on them. Like, if they made it here, we would have to trust on their intellectual ability to tell what we mean when we say
Well,
things.
if they made it here, yeah.
Right.
If we made it there, then it's on us.
Then we're fucked, yeah.
Well, then you know what? It's going to be like a Warhammer 40K. God, we were made in God's image, not you. Like that. That's what, I think that...
That's funny.
I think for us to make that switch to go from type 0 to type 1 civilization, where we begin to, you know, create Dyson spheres and to
Harnessing
conquer our
energy
own
from the sun and
conquer our own solar system. I think that for us to make that switch, there is going to be a huge change in the in the ideologies of humans, you know, like we have to have such a drastic change in values in order to become because as a path right now we are such like a war hungry culture or species,
too much,
like we are so quick to violence, and I think that's because at least on this planet, imagine like maybe it could be different on other planets, but at least on this planet every single creature's evolutionary path starts from a vicious cycle of sex and death.
Yeah,
right?
That's a great point.
So everything is fighting to survive in some way
Survival
or
of
another.
The fittest.
Yes,
and
right?
that's what's led us here. Yeah, you're right.
All the beings on our planet have started or have this inherent desire or at least spark or gene in them that allows them or makes them capable of war.
Extreme acts
of violence, right? So let's imagine for a second that another species developed on an entirely different planet that's amoebas
and they get their energy from the sun without having to do any kind of killing.
Completely different than us.
Yeah.
No killing, no nothing.
Non-violent.
What kind of decisions... Now, let's give them a million years. Let's fucking a million years. Not even that. 1,000 years of advancement over us right now. And they make it here. You are a highly advanced species. You are now at a point where you have seen a good portion of the cosmos. You understand what the building blocks or the pathway of a civilization that's either going to be successful or a failure is, and you come across a planet whose entire evolutionary track was a vicious cycle of sex and death. Do you engage that planet and try to host anything with them, or do you observe them and get the fuck out of there, dude? I'm out. I'm not fucking hanging around with these monkeys with nukes.
Well, actually, that goes back to like an interesting thought is like, what I would do is I'd make a TV show out of it.
Oh, right?
You know what I mean?
Dude, we're just straight up entertainment.
Yeah.
All these fucking UFOs, the Tic Tac and shit.
If you
it's all just camera crews.
Yeah. Well, these are the kind of people that I would make. if I wanted to, like, if say like you said, we've already discovered everything we need to discover.
Dude, we'd be the Jersey Shore of the solar system.
Yeah,
are you kidding me?
So we're this crazy, highly, successful species, and we've discovered everywhere. We're bored. We're like, fuck it, let's make some species and fuck around. Even if we don't make the humans,
you would just make a species to just fucking have entertainment. Yeah. Galactus, get in here!
Yeah.
These motherfuckers are dropping nukes and suns on each other. Holy shit!
Yeah.
This TV series is getting great.
Yeah, and then one of them's like, whoa, that's too big.
Let's we gotta get in there. Referees!
Yeah.
Whistle!
Yeah,
dude, that'd be fucked.
It's like, I mean, sometimes I wonder, because it really is like, it's like we're the perfect, we really are like the perfect, it doesn't make sense. Like what we are and what we're made of, we're like polar opposites. Like I had this funny like thought that like, we're literally like the perfect combination of something that, like the perfect byproduct of something that's like, one thing that's like 100% rational. No emotion, right? Just completely rational. And then like Spock, right? And then the other parent or whatever that we're a combination of is completely emotional. No logic, right? Just pure emotion. They have a baby and here we are. And we're just half logic and half emotion. And it doesn't really, and the emotion is the one at the wheel, like the majority of the time. It's because our emotions guide us largely. Otherwise, we wouldn't give a shit about anything, because us caring about anything at all is emotionally driving you. It's crazy. It's really an interesting, like there's so many different avenues to go down, but it's just a funny thought. It's like, yeah, there's nothing really that's like it's like a hypocrisy. It's like we're so vastly different from ourselves. It's almost like ridiculous how opposite we are. Like the two different like things battling within us that we possess are so polar opposite. It doesn't make sense. It's almost like artificial in some kind of a way. It's like we're half robotic, yeah, I mean, robotic's a great way to describe it. Like half robotic and half just like pure love. And it's like, what the fuck? It's just strange. It's a strange thing, I don't know what to make of it. I don't know. But, yeah, I don't know. What do you think?
I think it was pretty crazy.